So anyway, for everyone watching, because you're probably watching this right now on YouTube or Instagram, and if you're new, this is a podcast. I call it the Creative Movers Podcast. But recently, we've been interviewing dancers specifically in the popping community, boogaloo community, talking about animation, the different styles there are, with the history where it's coming from. We've interviewed people from LA, we've interviewed people from the Bay Area, and we're just, putting the pieces together. This really started out for talking about animation, understanding where that came from, the style. But also, we will touch up on animation today, but we'll also talk about other styles as well and kind of uh, where the style, how it went from Oakland, LA's relationship with Oakland, and also strutting, because I feel we see it done, but I don't know if a lot of people, at least the current generation, how familiar they are with it. I only know of it because of YouTube and what I've seen people talk about it. We have here Boogaloo Dana, who is part of Media Circus, which is a big influence in strutting, the influence they have. We also have Boogaloo Bill here joining us as well. And Bryce, who also from Playboys, is here. So we have I feel a great, how do I say, like representation of the Bay Area and strutting. Um, so yeah, I guess further ado, thank you, Boogaloo Dana, for taking time. Thank you, Boogaloo Bill, for being here. And thank you, Bryce, for connecting me to Boogaloo Dana and then getting to connect to the Boogaloo Bill. So, yeah, guys, how are we feeling? And yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, feeling
it's
good.
an honor. It's an honor.
Thank you so much for having us.
yeah, no, of course. I appreciate you taking the time. I know we've been talking about animation in the previous interviews, but first, I guess I'd like to ask Boogaloo Dana and Boogaloo Bill, as how did you get into dance? What were you doing? How did you get into the dance?
Bill, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Um, I can go first. I'll start with the very first time I saw a robot. In 1965, it was a science fiction movie, and it starred a robot. His name was Tobar, and that was the very first time I'd ever saw a robot in the actual movements.
Mm.
That was right around 1965. 1968, 1969, I was at an elementary school talent show, and one of the guys that was in my class, his name was Caurice Titus, and I saw him dancing, and instantly when I saw him, I got the bug.
Mm.
And so the following, I began to start trying to learn it. So I'd say by 1970, 1971, I'd gotten pretty decent at it. And I began with a little known style. Now it's called head hunting. Back then it was called head snatching. It's a very theatrical style. There were movements, there were sounds, there was touching, there was pulling of clothes, there was taking off of hats. It was a style that was created to embarrass you because there's a lot of talking going back and forth. So and there's a and it has roots, and the roots date back before the 60s, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
So it didn't begin as a dance. It began as something else and it evolved into it. So the foundation of it basically was the same. It came from embarrassing talking about one another. As it evolved, it came to be with the same when it came to the speaking, but then there was music and there was movement and all of that, together. And there were two phases of it. There was just the natural movements of that, and then there was this thing called animation that was sort of, incorporated into the movements. So that's where I got my start. And then as I got older, that style sort of transitioned out and it gave way to this new thing called posing.
Wow.
And
What?
yeah,
Sorry to, because there's so much right now what you said that I want to just touch back on it. So you're saying 1970, the head snatching style?
yes,
Ni- And so this was a style people were using with dance against an opponent and like
yes,
grabbing their head. Like
Yes,
taking
they were
the hat off,
grabbing the head and doing things with it, eating it, throwing it, tossing it up, hitting it with a
and
baseball
it
bat.
was getting popular in the
Oh,
1970s.
very, very, very popular. Very popular. It was, I believe that it was sort of the beginning of it. Now, let me just say this. Geographically, Oakland is broken up into three areas. You have East Oakland, West Oakland, and North Oakland.
Hmm.
I grew up in West Oakland, and head snatching was created exclusively in West Oakland. So it was a style that we were doing there, and then it branched out to other communities. As people moved, east, north, west, they sort of took bits and pieces of it, with them.
Right.
But that's where I started.
Okay. Wow. And then what up in the 60s? Was there a head snatching or no? What was it done in the 60s? What were
Well, it was a combination of things because now you're entering into this other type of boogaloo, which was social dancing. That's where you had your James Browns.
right?
So it was that, and it was integrated with the head snatching.
Hmm, interesting. Okay.
So yeah,
Wow. Okay. So then this head snatching style, and then you said it evolved
yes,
into what was it? What was it you said it evolved into?
posing.
Posing.
It came into a posing style. So it's this thing called hitting.
Okay.
Or
How did that,
okay.
yeah, how
Yeah,
did that turn
yeah,
into
it
posing?
transitioned. So for us in West Oakland, it went from the head snatching,
Hmm.
and those who could transition went into posing. And then from posing, it went to hitting. And then after hitting, there was this thing called dime stop. And
Interesting.
then from dime stop, it went from the harder hit.
Hmm.
So you got guys like Kearney.
Yes.
That was his claim to fame. He wasn't the only one doing it, but that's kind of the lineage. That's what we experienced being in West Oakland.
So Kearney is influential in terms of a hard dime stop and a hard hit.
No, he's influential in terms of the hard hit.
The hard hit.
The
Okay.
hard hit. So you had this. So you had the posing. See, posing and hitting
Yeah.
were almost identical. They were almost identical because you had a regular hit and then you had the harder hit. So everybody's on a quest to evolve and do something different.
Right.
So when Kearney decided that he was going to do something different,
Hmm.
so he was the one that sort of I don't want to say that he was the one who actually created it, but he's the one that made it popular.
Wow. Okay.
And so at first it was just a hard hit.
Hmm.
But as the hard hit caught on, of course, trying to be ever much the creator, he included vibrating with his hit.
Kearney.
So Kearney.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
that's why his hit, when he hits, you see a little vibrate in his hit
Yeah.
because prior to that, it was just a hard hit. But
Right.
again, because this art form was so competitive,
Hmm.
he wanted to stay a step ahead of the game. So he put the vibrate in with the hit, with the hard hit. So that's where you see that when he
Wow.
hits.
Okay.
And it's a little different from it's a little different from everybody else who hits.
Hmm. Okay.
That's his little additive extra thing.
Got it. Wow.
Yeah.
And I know from because previously I did an interview with Chuck Powell and Kearney as well in a previous one, and
Hmm.
from the Black Messengers. And I know people have said how the Black Messengers were an influence in
Yes.
Oakland, a very big influence. Okay, got it. Okay, so as you were saying about your own style, that you saw the robot, and then you saw the head snatching style, then it go into posing. Where were you? What was your journey in continuing forward from the 70s, maybe going into the 80s?
By 1978, I graduated from high school in 1977. By 1978, I began adulting.
Mm,
So I went off to college. I had a full ride scholarship to go play baseball. That's another whole story.
mm,
But I began adulting. So I didn't, I wasn't active in actual performing,
mhm.
but I tried to keep my ear as low to the ground as I possibly could.
Mhm.
The person you really want to ask that question to is the gentleman sitting to my right, because
Mm,
Dana is probably the only dancer from my era. We come from the same era.
okay.
Dana's the only dancer who actually never stopped performing.
Interest,
The
right.
only one that I know of from my era. There was only one other person that came close. Rest in peace. He passed away, and his name was Rio Robot.
Wow. He was consistently dancing through 70s,
Consistently
80s,
dancing the whole.
90s. Wow. Okay. And it's interesting because when I'm referring back to the other interviews, I believe like I know Mark Newson has shared that he's at a certain high school. I think after high school it was he stopped. Some people went to the military,
Yeah.
or some people yeah. So I guess this is a great opportunity to have Dana share, since you were consistent through the 70s, 80s, 90s. You didn't go away for a time period or like a large time period. So, all right. So let's transition to Dana. How did you get into this dance? How did you?
I love
This is gonna take a couple of minutes.
it. I love it.
So before I start talking, I want to give a disclaimer before I start talking. So my disclaimer is so my name is Boogaloo Dana. The co-founder of Media Circus, formerly known as Demons of the Mind. Also, I was in a group out of Richmond called the Criminons. I've been consistently dancing since 1972 up until now 2025, either physically involved with it or indirectly involved with it. I never missed a beat. In the Bear, they consider me a Barry historian of Bay Area Boogaloo or art and culture music boogalooing. Another thing, a disclaimer I want to say is when I talk about answer the questions you're talking about, you'll see me look it up in the air because we're talking about 50 years and 40 years we have to remember. So we'll say around 70, around 70. We're not going to always be accurate with the dates. We'll try to get as accurate as we can.
Mhm.
Also, all the stuff that I'll be answering is either stuff I experienced myself, that I've seen with my own eyes, or from the many interviews we did from a lot of the elders, some who are not even here anymore. So
Hmm.
I'll try to be accurate as possible. So I want you guys to focus on the story and the bigger picture as opposed it was exactly in January the 20th at 5 a.m. in the morning. Nobody's gonna remember that. You know what I'm saying? So, but I'll try to get as accurate. And if I can't answer it, I'll find out the answer. And there's no answer I won't duck. There's not a situation to bash anybody. This is for information. There's no answer I won't duck. I'll try to answer as much as I can. If I know it, I'll ask him. If it's something with the new generation that's transition, I'll get Bryce to translate the younger generation. So basically, I just want that's my disclaimer. So when I'm talking, I can be free and just kind of go through my journey as you're asking questions. So that's my disclaimer.
Okay. Nice. All right. So with that being said, Dana, how did you get into the dance? How did you get into dance? Well, what was
So okay, so when I saw the dance, I didn't know I didn't know that was the dance. So about 19 here I go right here. Around 1970 or 71, I think I was 10 or 11 years old. I used to stay with my grandmother in East Oakland on 98th and 8th Street, and she lived in the hood. So my grandmother was real strict with all the grandkids. We couldn't go outside, because those kids were bad. So I had to stay in the living room and just look out the living room and just reminisce and hope I could play with those kids. So every night I look out the window, it was a big frame window, and nothing was going on. It was just like some kids playing up. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, some
Yeah.
kid, I get it's a
We're
kid.
getting a lot of
I
shaking
got the
because of this
shaking.
table.
That was part of the vibrating.
We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there.
And so it was a big mirror, and I look, I'm big window, and I look out. Okay, some kids playing. What's the big deal? Animated J. One night I looked out, and something happened.
Hmm.
I looked out the window, and I couldn't even, I'm 10, 11 years old, so I can't even explain it. I can explain it now as an adult, but I couldn't grasp it at the same time. There were three tall guys that I was 10, 11. They might have been about 16, 17 years old. It was three tall, skinny guys, real skinny. They were coal black. They
Hmm.
had these long maxi coats on. They had these long perms and they had these Godfather hats on. And
Wow.
they were playing baseball, but there was no baseball. There was no bat. There was no mitt. There was no referee.
That's crazy. Okay.
I'm
Good.
like, what the hell is going on? So what they were doing is now I had knee surgery a while ago, so I can't move like in,
Mhm.
we're older guys trying to demonstrate, so use your imagination.
Right, right.
So I'm looking in the mirror and I see the guy, he reaches out. Now, I want to say this when you see me do this. Animation, we'll address that later, but Animation and Boogaloo were born together, separated, and came back as a marriage. And
Wow.
so I'm giving you a precursor to that, which we'll get into that later. So you'll wonder why is he doing that? So I remember the guy was sitting there and he looked like this. He went in his coat and got like he had a bat and he grabbed it and he went this way and posed and he hit the ball, but he looked this way and he turned his ball around. He threw his neck around. Because they did a lot of this. He threw his hands like this and his head and wormed and he started creeping towards the front. Then the other guy came up. He grabbed the bat. He put it up in his hair. He put it up in the air. He looked this way. He put his neck around. He hit the ball and he looked like it was no pose. It was just freezing him. He stopped. He did his neck around and he shifted his way and then he broke down like this and grabbed me and he pointed at the guy and that guy came up and then they both turned and they all start going towards the first base. I'm like, what is that called? I'm like, what's that? He turned this way and I think he moved his hand. He threw his hand and he stopped. I was blown away. So every night they would do something. Next night they play a dice game. The guy was playing dice. He put the dice out of his pocket. He broke down, hit the dice. He stole the dice. The guy pulled a gun and shot him. He came like pulled his coat up, threw his coat to the side with his hand. He pulled his hand like this, and he put up. He shot him, and the guy fell down dead. And they turned around and did his whole funeral and turned around and started marching like a casket and turned around. They started throwing their hands around, and he pulled this way, and he it was crazy. Pointed up to heaven, like
So
I don't know what's going on.
You're watching this outside of
I'm watching this outside. Yeah,
window. You're just watching these kids
they're doing a skit. I can explain it now as an adult, but as I didn't have the words for it. All I know is these guys are real skinny and they were stepping, and the main thing they were doing their next, they were throwing their hands out and they used to worm a lot and they would freeze and he'll point it to the other guy and the guy would turn this way and he'd come up like this and he'll grab a bite and he'll hit this way and he'll like this and look up this way and then they all start creeping this way to the first base and then they all break down, come down, and it was cold.
Wow. Okay.
And so this is what they were doing.
Okay.
Man. I know what you're trying to ask, but I can't explain because I don't know what it is yet.
Right.
I don't know what it is. They do this every night.
Right.
So this is they're doing stuff like that. So 2 years later, I moved to Berkeley and ended up going to King Junior High School in 72. So in 72, all the black schools and all the black areas in all the United States were renaming their names after slain civil rights. Malcolm X, Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King. So with the Martin Luther King. So I didn't forget about this guy. I'm in the 7th grade. The guy next to me name is Drake. He's got a perm. He's got a net on his. He's got a hat. He's got a cane. He's in the 7th grade with a cane. He's got a long cane.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, he starts reaching up and closing doors and grabbing stuff out. And he acts like he has a cigar. Then he goes to sleep and he wakes himself up again. Then he turns this way and points at the teacher. And then he grabs his coat up and he comes down and comes acting like this. He comes up. He's not posed yet. His neck and when he starts doing his neck, he starts getting smaller. Then he hits himself again. He blows up like this. Then he starts climbing up like this, and then he starts moving this way. But he's not posed. He's moving this way. Then he grabs his neck this way, and he grabs himself back. Then he goes back, and then he goes back to sleep again, opens up the desk, comes up again, and stops like this. Like, I'm like, what the hell is that called?
Hold on. I'm sorry. I gotta process this. So you're in class.
I'm in the 7th grade.
And the guy, he's just doing this in his seat.
Every day he's grabbing some this way. Well, he's not posing that kid.
Right.
He's turning this way and he's grabbing this way. He's coming back. Then everything everybody does. And he throws his hand around. Then he wiggles his thing. Then he opens up the desk. He hides his desk. He brings himself back up. I think he turned this way and pulled the teacher in. He was pulling the teacher. He said, "What are you doing?" And he cut it. Then he comes up like he's asleep.
Wow.
I'm trying to remember these moves. This is years ago. Then because he had maxi coat. Then he pulled his coat up. Then he looked up his coat, turned this way, and went back down. His head was gone. Brought it back again. He wormed up again, and then he threw his hands on like this, and he stopped like a puppet. And then he put his coat up there. He put up this coat, brought his coat back, met his coat back this way, went to sleep. Boom, boom. He starts moving like this, side to side, and moving his hand, like woo. I said, "Man, can you show me how to do that?" He said, "If you show me how to read and show me how to spell, because he was kind of illiterate. I'll teach you. Shit, by the time I got through him, he was a genius. And so he took me behind the gym and he started showing. I said, what is that called? He says it's called bugging, boogaloo, and cutting up. It's 3 names. Okay, bugging,
Interesting.
boogaloo, and cutting up. I'm in the 7th grade. This is 1972. And I said, well, how do you? He said, all you're doing is all I'm doing is take imaginary things and moving stuff to the side and bring stuff back like this. And he's moving stuff like this and he's breaking down like this. He's grabbing himself, bringing stuff back up. This neck starts going around. He presses, then he goes like 4 times down. He brings his coat up, turns his coat, then his body turns with his coat. Then he brings his coat back. Then he goes like this and goes to sleep to the side. Then he throws his hand. He's doing all kind of, I mean, it's mind blowing. I'm trying to remember this stuff from 50, 60 years ago. And so he showed me how to do that. I got really, really good. He said, don't do nothing until I'm finished with you. So he finished with me. He ended up going to juvenile YA because he was straight, he's a thug, criminal, hood, gangster, pimp. And all his brothers was. And then when I broke out the dance the first time, everybody went crazy because they didn't know I could dance. And next thing you know, the whole world was calling me Boogaloo Dana. So that's how I became Boogaloo Dana. That's yeah.
Wow.
I know I'm showing moves from 50, so I'm probably rusty. This is we're old, but I'm trying to give you the best way I can do it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm blown away just by you doing it right now, how you're imitating it and you're saying it.
Remember, I haven't done that. I haven't done that since the 7th grade. We're talking about 60 something years. So forgive the rustiness, but I'm just trying to tell the story the best way I can.
The way you've described it, the level of creativity and the playfulness and the cleanness is, in my opinion, like, wow, like
was that pretty good for old guy?
For old guy, and for being in the 70s, this dude in your class doing that,
Drake.
I feel Drake.
He's the one that showed me what it was.
Drake, like the way you're explaining it to me, I feel that fits to today's standard. Like I feel people today would trip out, like as well. Like
it's one of the unlocked. It's like the Dead Scrolls. It's one of the ones they didn't unlock. They never got out.
Right. So okay. So you said that there was 2 moves. If you could clarify the arm movements, what was that called?
So the basic move, which I'll get back to the beginning, how Animated and Boogaloo were born together and how they separated and came back together. They were interlocked marriage. The main move that most people did, because the posing hadn't came out yet, it was just freezing. So it was 3 things going on. So it was the main thing that Boogaloos did back then was you always see them throwing their hands like this, different varieties, which is pre-Neanderthals Fillmore, we'll get into that later. They would throw their hands like this. They would always throw their neck around, and they would stop, and they would roll their chests, and then they would turn into a creature. That was the main ingredient. It was on you how you did that variety. Everybody did that combination. Throw your hand. No, the hop hadn't came out. Well, we hadn't got the hop yet because Hamill came with the hop in 72. But when I was at junior high, the hop hadn't came to Berkeley yet. I didn't find out the hop till later on. So that hop was the next move, but it was basically the hand movement like this. They were doing like this. They were throwing it around. No, we didn't even. No, they did. I'm gonna tell you about the creeping story in a minute. They like that because remember I just started, so I don't know all this stuff yet.
Okay,
and, so the arms. They throw the arms out like this, and their neck is going around, and it was always a freeze, stop, and when you freeze, you might take something up like this and move to the side and turn like this and open. And you might take this, open it. Take some groceries out. Kind of how Robot Prince.
Yeah, exactly.
How Robot Prince. We were kind of doing. He's strictly, Robot Prince is this. He's got the. But we were in and out of it. It was like constantly in and out. We might take something and bring it up. Then we go back to this. Then we might go down and bring ourselves up. Then they used to coat, like I said, they would bring the coat to the side, turn this way, and bring the coat back, come back this way, come up. His head would disappear. He'll sneak this way and push the button, his head will come out, and he'll grab his head up like this. Then he'll throw like this. He'll worm. It was like a worming. And he'll hit a button over here and worm right down. Stop again. And it was constant angles and constantly like this, and playing with stuff like I guess from pantomime. I guess
right.
That was the gist of what they were doing.
Wow. Okay.
Keep in mind, I'm doing something I haven't done probably since the 7th grade. So,
right. But I see the picture. I understand.
Yeah, they're grabbing stuff. That's the basis. The hands, the wiggle, the neck, and the stop. That's the basic 4 moves. And between, whatever you want to do in between is up to you.
Okay. So
and he like moving stuff. He like moving stuff out the way and open the desk and turning this way and grabbing stuff and like this. And he would take something out the sky and then he'd smoke something. he'll blow up like this and press the stuff and he inflate again. Then he'll break down like this, is like a doll, and then he'll come up like this, and his eyes will go up in his head, and he'll move around like this, come like Frankenstein, like come out of like that. He was doing shit like that.
It is so interesting. Okay, a couple of thoughts that are coming.
It'd be 1,000 years to explain all this. But go ahead.
Couple of thoughts that I just have right now. It in
Oh, I'm
my
sorry.
perspective,
Okay.
in my perspective, it's interesting when you're talking about the this neck head roll. It reminds me because again, when I'm watching how I got into dance is stuff in the 2000s, later 2000s. It reminds me of almost the neck isolation that became very popular. Just it seems like an exaggerated form of that. Like this, just my opinion. I'm not saying
Are you talking about the one that Decoy Manuse does all the time when he's like this?
which he has watched others as well. It has
Okay.
become a very popular
Yeah,
movie.
that's not new. He just did it. He does it in a different formation.
Right. So that was one thought I was in my mind. I'm like, I could see the
Okay.
similarity. And then the two questions I'd like to ask you is, can you explain what is creeping and worming?
So you want?
Well, okay. Well, first of all,
I'll answer. You can ask him first.
creeping, creeping was probably one of the foundational pieces of this dance, and it's always been around. I can't remember a time when I ever saw this dance where creeping wasn't a part of the dance. So, as a solo artist, creeping was used if you would say you were at a party and you were dancing, you were doing social dance, and your record came on, and there was someone in the party that you wanted to go against. Well, you turned to that person and you pointed them out, boom. And then as that person turned, you both started creeping towards a point in the room. And it was generally the center of the room. And then the circle formed around you. So what I'm explaining to you now is what we call battling. That's how we did our battles. You call someone out, they met you in the center of the room, the circle formed around you. So then people ask, well, people were all on top of you and crowding you. No, because as the dancers moved, the people around them knew that the circle moved with the dancers. So as they moved out, as we danced, they moved out. As we got closer, they came in closer.
Right.
So and it was different because everything now, it's more orchestrated. So now it's like, okay, you got 10 seconds to do this. After you're done, then you get 10 seconds. That wasn't a battle for us. We battled each other at the same time. So
At the same time.
At the exact same time.
Yeah.
That is
people ask, how do you determine a winner? Well, let me tell you this. If the party was Friday night, by Monday morning, everybody knew who won or lost. So reputations were lost and gained this way. Now, mind you, we didn't have the technology that you have, but we had telephones. So
people talking.
people talking. So it was either done that way where it was random, or if there was a social event going on, like a dance or anything like that, the word got around that this person from this school was going to go against that person from this school on a Friday night.
Right.
Well, those two people showed up, but so did everyone else. So we figured out who were the winners and who were the losers at the same time. So our concept of battle is different than the concept of battle right now. It's not the same. It's absurd because when you think about a real battle, it's all happening at the same time.
Right. It's not planned out.
No, it's not planned. No, it's not planned. Well, even if it is, it's not like it isn't orchestrated. Like, yeah. So when we watch a battle today, for us, that's like foreign because for us, that's not considered an actual battle. It's like Dana uses this word all the time, gladiator sport. Well, sport is the key thing. It's like, so you had people that played football, baseball, basketball. Well, the art was our sport. So we practiced and we trained just like the athletes did. And that was just our sport. That didn't mean that boogaloos didn't play sports and the people who play sports didn't boogaloo. Right. It's just that the concept was exactly the same. So that's one form of how creeping came. The other form was when the dance transitioned from this thing called street dance onto the stage, which necessitated groups. Creeping was your entrance and your exit off the stage. That's it. That's it. That's all creeping was. It was nothing more than that. So there's just not enough content in that one move for it to be a style.
Okay, it's a move. It's a move.
It's all it is.
It's a move.
It's just a move.
Is it when someone is creeping? Is there always that pause, or doesn't need to be a pause when you're creeping?
Well, in the beginning, well, going back to head snatching, before the whole animation piece of it took place,
Mhm.
it was more of just a movement, a natural walk and a glide. But then when the animation part came in, you could go boom,
Boom, right. You creep, right. Then you're
boom, or you could go boom, boom, boom,
because
boom.
that's what I saw. That's when I heard of the term creeping.
Hmm.
The videos that would pop up would be people, and I'm guessing the videos were from Boogaloo dancers or
Hmm.
Boogaloo of people. They're doing like this. They're coming in. They're
Yes.
like even maybe like the movie Break In, which like Taco and he's like kind of coming into the cipher. That look was that. Would you say creeping?
Yes, that's what creeping is, and everybody has their
Coming
own
in. They're
form of it. But it's been around. There's not a style of dance that precedes Boogaloo where there's not a version of creeping in it. You can name any of them. There is a version of creeping in it. It's probably the number one move that's been around from the beginning up till now, and it probably always will be, especially if there's the concept of a battle involved.
Would you say the concept of a battle and creeping
Mhm.
come from the 70s and Boogaloo, or is this from your
Oh
past
no,
like
no,
50?
this was before. No, creeping was around before the 70s.
Okay, it's been through history of it's a
It's
historical.
probably it's probably, I would say, and Dana, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I would say that is probably the move that's been around longer than any other.
Interesting.
So, okay, so creeping, according to our elders and towards our interviews, so I saw creeping when I was in the seventh grade. There was a group called the Soul Steppers and the Mechanical Movements. They used to creep, but I didn't know where it came from. I just thought it was cool. It
Mhm.
wasn't until recently, just in the last several years in research, that we found out where our creeping comes from. And Jerry Rente has a thing called You Must Learn One or Two. I'm not, you must learn one or two. And he says, because they're older than us,
Mhm.
he's actually second generation. Um, he said that he was watching the Disney Channel one time, and they had these playing cards that had hands and
Right.
legs in them, and
Mhm.
they were moving like this forward. And he said he saw that, and he turned around and turned that into creeping. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the Seven Dwarfs got something where they're kind of moving
Mhm.
like that too, and
Mhm.
they're moving. It's the moving forward part.
Right. This
So
move.
for whatever reason, Jerry Rente took that move, even though the cards were moving like this,
Right.
he
Right.
said they took that style and he came with the creeping, which his was more like, because there was no pose then, it was just freezing. So one of the effects of creeping is when the whole purpose of the dance is the illusion to look unreal and to look, it's illusion.
Mhm.
So when they would creep, they would stop. Every time you creep, you stop.
Mhm.
It wasn't a hit. I've been hitting for so long. I don't even know how to stop, freeze regular, but you freeze and you freeze, you stop. Because one of the reasons, another reason was part of Jason the Argonauts, but I won't go into that now. But yeah, the creeping goes back to Jerry Rente, which I believe is 1970. Because before that, the guys for him they weren't creeping. So I think 72 is a date when he said his influence was the cards marching, and him and his friend Michael E. Knox and
Probably
Albert
before
Al
that.
was that before that?
Probably the late 60s.
Late
Oh
six the
yeah,
creeping?
yeah. Oh yeah, creeping's been around
Well,
since then.
oh,
Yeah.
he correct me. He fact checked me. Who
Mhm.
was doing creeping before them?
No, they were doing it, but they were doing it at that time.
Oh yeah,
Because
because
they was dancing.
because he's right because Jerry Rente started dancing in '67. I'm going by he's right.
Mhm.
Okay, I got my fact checker here, so if I'm not right, I tell him the fact because I want to be accurate and I have
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
problem. Okay,
Mhm.
so it was before. Okay, he's
That's
what
what
six,
I heard. That's one of the first
67,
moves.
68.
Yeah.
Well, we know it was done between 67 and 72.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Like I
Okay.
said, we're not going to be
Right.
accurate
Right.
on the dates.
Okay. And then damn, there's two thoughts I'm having. One is you've mentioned Jerry's second generation. So what is first generation? Who is first generation?
The first generation would be a gentleman by the name of Donald Matthews, better known as Duck. He would be our Don Camelot, our Cool Herc.
Wow.
That's our person. We never say the word create. He innovated because no one person creates something. Something's created over a period of time.
Mhm.
Even God. And how long did it take God to create the earth?
6 days.
Even God, our creator, just took 6 days to create the earth. So nobody creates everything at one time.
Nice.
And so he innovated, and through him, he evolved. So So Duck, far as the Boogaloo, Duck is the first person, but before him was a group called Pirate and the Easy Walkers, and LT was their leader. But they weren't Boogaloo; they were doing the Italian. They were doing were they Italian and Boogaloo?
Yeah,
Or were
they
they
called it
were just
Boogaloo, but it wasn't like what Boogaloo would. Like Duck basically was they mainly just did the Italian and other social dances
other
and like
social dances and the
their
Italian?
own unique moves. So they would do some stuff,
They
some
would
of
do
that
some stuff, but it
storytelling
wasn't
stuff.
it wasn't really developed yet.
Were they doing Were they doing the stuff that the Jason was it? No, it wasn't Jason. Your Drake. Your
No,
classmate.
no, no. Drake. No, we're talking about before that. Drake
So
is
they weren't doing movements
no
like
Drake. This leads up to what Drake, because Drake
okay,
started it. I met Drake in '72 in junior high school.
right.
The guys we're talking about, Duck, he graduated in 1970 from Fremont High School, and he started dancing. I think him and Jerry Ritchie started around the same time. They both started in '67 Boogaloo.
Okay.
But there's some guys older than them called what he's talking about Pirate and Easy Walkers, and they were doing social dance mixed in with James Brown, mixed in with social dances. But they have one specific move called the Italian, which is the grandfather of the Shamrock. You see people now shamrocking like this and like this.
Yeah.
That was the grandfather move of the Shamrock. And so what happened was Duck, who was the first guy who innovated this dance, he incorporated that. So let me tell you, I'm glad you brought this. Leads to this right now. So Duck Donald Matthews, rest in peace. He's gone now.
Mm.
He's the first person. I think him and Jerry Ritchie are simultaneously creating moves at the same. But Duck, what happened was in 1960s, in the 70s, he used to be at the parties, because first Boogaloo, whatever it was, it started in the house parties. It hadn't came out in the open. It was inside a house, the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was everybody was doing the mashed potatoes, the James Brown, all the social dance, the skate. And so was he. So imagine, you know how Old Dirty Bastard is? You know how Old Dirty Bastard acts, how animated Old Dirty Bastard is?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how Duck was. He was just like Old Dirty Bastard, always doing something crazy. He was just like the clown around. So what happened was he saw his mother or somebody took him to an African class, and it was some Africans dancers dancing, and they were rolling their chests. They were wearing their chests around. He took that move and incorporated with his dancing. And then another thing he did was there's a show that's come on between 1967 and 60 called Highlight. Yeah, there's a show in Chicago called Highlight. And the star of that show was named Crazy Harold. And the guy named Crazy Harold should throw his hands up real fast, like boom, 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 boom. So all the guys I interviewed in Oakland said they saw that guy named Crazy Harold on that show in Chicago called Highlight. They adapted that hand movement. Duck adapted a hand movement from Harold. He took the role um, from the African dancers, and then he was already throwing his head around and stopped. That was who he did. That's how he was. He just, I don't know where he got the freeze in the head, but you see the evolution? He would throw his head around, he'd always stop, and he'd throw his hands out from Crazy Hero. He'd do the role from the African dancers, and he took the Shamrocks, he took the Italian from LT and them who were older than him. He mixed them all together, and that's how the style started forming. So when they start moving away from the James Brown and mashed potatoes, he started doing that, and people saw that and like, you know, the word is people on the word, oh man, did you see that guy Boogaloo? He be Boogalooing. And because you never name yourself, people name you. It doesn't work that way. You don't say I'm a book, everybody names you. And that name keeps coming around for 50 years. Boogaloo keeps recycling. But this is the first time it was attached to a dance with that type of movement. So now Duck is doing something totally different nobody's seen before. He's throwing his hands up, he's wiggling around, he's throwing his hand around, he's stopping, he's doing the early the Italian, which is like the Shamrock. So what happens is he goes to high school and he tries out for the mascot. So everybody knows about a mascot. You dress up in an outfit and you mess around with the cheerleaders, you act like a clown, you get the crowd hyped up. All mascots did this.
Wow.
But when he got in the mascot thing, the band is playing this. It's going boom, 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 boom. It's the school band. Boom. Now the other mascot is acting stupid and doing some clown stuff. You don't know. All of a sudden, Duck's going boom, 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 boom. And he starts boom. And he starts doing the Italian boom. Then he turns into a creature like a monkey. And then he starts. Man, my whole shit was the tiger. Yeah, he started doing the tiger, and he was in a tiger outfit, but he was imitating other creatures. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't Dinorama yet. That hadn't came. He wasn't trying to do it. He was just acting silly. he was turned into creatures, and he was boom, and nobody ever seen that before. So everybody's come to see this guy named Duck because nobody knew what that was. So about the 2 or 3 games, everybody finally caught on. So all the mascots start doing it, and they start taking what he did and did their own variety. So everybody was doing that, some form of hand, throwing their neck around, stop posing, throwing their thing around, that shamrock, and create and turn into some kind, whatever their school was, they would turn into the animal. And that's how
This is crazy.
I know I'm talking,
No,
I know
no,
I'm talking
it's
fast, but I'm trying to get a lot of information.
no,
And look,
it's
that's how it started.
it's just I just want it's
And
just
he didn't know he was the creatures. Wasn't trying to animate. That's where animation was being born.
because the
But
mascot.
he wasn't trying to do that. That wasn't the next generation until they start naming it. But that's how it was born. Animation and Boogaloo together. That's how it started.
Yeah, he didn't do claymation, like the technique,
Right.
He didn't do that yet.
but he was imitating characters and
Characters.
animals and
Characters.
monsters.
The idea of image characters and including characters into his dance. This, throw the neck around, and then can you imagine a band at halftime? Boom, 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 boom. They were like, "What the hell?" And he thought, "Boom, boom, boom." You know, that seems old
It's
now.
just-
Back then, that was exciting. Nobody ever seen that before.
I just got.
And,
I like
and
to.
that's the first. That's how it started.
I just
get excited. I get excited when I talk about it because people. This is the real truth.
This and
I need him to fact check me because, like I said, he's doing the film on the film constantly. So I'm trying to remember stuff from 56 years ago.
it's just so fascinating hearing the story of how someone they're dressed up in a mascot outfit, or someone is dressed up as an animal, a creature, moving in a way that's already trippy. They're like, whoa, like this dude, he can dance, and what is he doing? Like that's crazy, and he's imitate like it's crazy to.
It's almost like people fighting with knives for 50, 100 years, and all somebody comes with a gun. Nobody's ever seen a gun before, and he shoots the guy and kills the guy. And everybody, oh my God, what just happened? It was like a slaying like that because the other guy didn't know what to do because they're just doing stupid stuff, getting the crowd hype and dancing and being like the cheerleaders. And all of a sudden, this guy comes out with these hands and throwing his neck around and stopping, and there was no jumping yet. And then he's turning like the Italian, and then he turns into a monster and starts coming at the guy. So the objective was to make the crowd laugh. I missed that part. The objective was to make the crowd laugh at you. So that was the initial objective. To make the crowd and make you humiliate you. And it got to the point where people didn't watch the game anymore. They just came to watch the mascot. So that's how I was born. Am I accurate? Am I accurate? I need my fact check because I don't want to be off.
That is very interesting. And I'm just referring now, I'm thinking about currently animators now who humor plays a role in their performance, and hearing how it seems like in the beginning, it was people, mascots, again, doing the movements, acting out characters to get the people to laugh, enjoy the movement, the performance that was happening. And that was another thought. Oh man, when you were just talking about.
But animate, Jay, let me tell you, that's great. It'll come back around.
Well, I was gonna say, would you have considered what Duck was doing animated? Would people say he's animated?
Yeah, it was moved. It wasn't called that, but yes, it was the birth of animation without the name.
Birth of
the fact that he would morph into the creatures. That brings it in an animated category, that which we know now to be animated. Yes.
All right. Okay. Got it. Sorry. Continuing.
Or I would be like, that would be the caterpillar. The butterfly was coming next.
Wow. Okay. It's taking shape. It's coming. Okay.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's coming next. So everybody in that's all the people at the schools were doing. That was a vibe. And that was called Boogaloo. And that was Boogaloo. Right there, those set of moves. This is where it gets tricky because those set of moves were called Boogaloo, but as they evolved, in all these styles, they just still kept the same umbrella.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw that in there.
The umbrella was Boogaloo.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the specific movements were Boogaloo. But they had the Boogaloo has been around forever. You had James Brown Boogaloo. You had Boogaloo on Broadway. You have Boogaloo bands in New York. You have Boogaloo in Puerto Rico. That name's been probably used 100 times. But this is the first time the word Boogaloo was used attached to this type of movement.
Like a funk
like what now?
It'd be the first time it was attached to a dance done to funk music, specifically.
Well, it wasn't funk music then. Funk hadn't came out yet.
Well, 67.
Oh no! I'm sorry. 67, Cold Sweat, James Brown. I apologize. Yeah. You're right. You're right. I mean, the band was. I don't even know what style that's. I guess that's a band in the school. You're right. I don't know what I'm thinking here. He's right.
Right. So Boogaloo is attached to the dance, and okay,
Yeah, yeah, to the me.
to
Because it
function.
was first, it was before it was records. What was records inside the parties, and then it went on the field with the lot with the school band, and eventually later on it went live bands on stage. But that's another story down the line. But it was a record player inside the house,
Mhm.
and then on the field it was a live band. Boom, 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 boom.
So,
And it's funny later on. He has a story where he went to McClimate grad in 77. That went on for a long time. It got to the point where he said where people had to try. It got so popular that people tell them your story about that.
Well,
And you can go back to what you're going to ask me earlier after that.
okay, let me just say this. I'm 66 years old. Okay. I'm not sure how old Dana is. Dana, what are you?
I'm near you. I'm around your side.
Around that area.
I'm around you.
Right. So when Dana was speaking about the guys outside of the window and
Yes.
the movements that they were doing, see, I knew what those movements were because that was part of the whole head snatching thing. That was part of that. So I knew what it was. So what I was hoping you were doing as you were listening was you were connecting as a dot from some of the things that were done in Boogaloo to some of the things that he described. Because what we're talking about is my perspective of this dance coming from West Oakland.
mm-hmm.
Dana speaking of his perspective of the dance coming from East Oakland and then Berkeley.
Yeah.
So when he spoke about the hop not being created yet, well, I had seen the hop because we had pioneers in West Oakland as well. And so in West Oakland, we call it the Kenny Chambers hop. And Kenny Chambers is a pioneer. He's a pioneer of the arm swing. He's a pioneer of the belly roll. He's a pioneer of the hop.
So this is okay. So wait, Duck is from East Oakland?
No.
Duck.
I'm West Oakland.
No, Duck is from
Duck.
Duck is from East Oakland.
Duck is East Oakland, and you just
Yes.
mentioned someone named, who did you not mention?
Kenny Chambers.
Kenny's from West Oakland.
Yes.
So okay, so this is interesting. Now this makes me
okay. So here's
okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say because
I know why he's confused.
I think for me also, I've been emphasizing, or at least every time I think of Oakland, I forget to remember the sections of Oakland and how things are separately, and I'm always kind of like, oh, Oakland in general.
Right, and that's how most people think. And so here's the interesting part: is that most of the people who grew up in East Oakland moved from West Oakland to East Oakland. So there's a lot of the style that came from West Oakland that they brought to East Oakland with them.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, I knew what the movements were that he was speaking of. I had seen the arm swing. I had seen the neck roll. I had seen all of that with the inclusion of the hop. Now, Kenny Chambers is a pioneer or a contributor to the head snatching style.
Okay.
So for us in West Oakland, that's where he came from. So we had him. We had Donald Jones. Okay. Donald Jones is an original member of Granny and the Robotroids. The Granny and the Robotroids were two groups put together as one. Two of the original members were from West Oakland, and they grew up in West Oakland, and they had their own style, the whole nine. So there's a whole list of what we consider to be our pioneers and our I try to stay away from the word create based upon what its definition innovative. So we had our own set. And the interesting thing about it is that East Oakland and West Oakland very seldom cross paths. So if you lived in East Oakland, you couldn't just arbitrarily come to West Oakland. It was a territorial thing. When I was in West Oakland, you couldn't just arbitrarily go to East Oakland unless you knew someone and you got a pass. So I didn't learn this dance by coming to East Oakland. Everything I learned was contained in West Oakland. Mind you, geographically, East Oakland is about 15, 20 times larger than West Oakland.
Okay.
So I didn't start venturing out to East Oakland until I was in high school. And that's when I really started to see some of the other stuff that had evolved. I didn't see posing for the first time until 1973, 74. So these were people who had transitioned from head snatching and they transitioned into this thing called posing.
Mm,
So I don't know where it came from or when it came. Everybody lays claim to what they lay claim to. But that's where this whole thing gets to be confusing because depending on where you grew up,
mhm.
that's where and how you learn the dance.
Right.
So a lot of the history that Dana speaks about, I know of and I've heard of it. Some of it I don't. Just like a lot of the history that I may speak of from West Oakland, some of it he's heard of, a lot of it he may have not. So I don't want to confuse you by totally trying to separate everything because at the end of the day, it all falls up under one umbrella.
Boogaloo.
Exactly.
Boogaloo. Okay.
Does
Got it.
that make
Yes.
sense? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. The separate. It's the influence. The West has
Yes.
West Oakland was there were already dancers in West Oakland. People were traveling to East. There was an influence from West to the East. Um, there's also innovators. It
East
seems
to
like on
west.
both
So
back and forth.
by that time there was cross
Yeah.
by that time there was cross influence.
Okay, and there's innovators on both sides,
Yes.
East Oakland and West Oakland. Okay, okay. Here, when, I know you mentioned okay, and Boogaloo is the dance. It's under Boogaloo. If West
Umbrella term.
East,
Yes,
Yep,
under
umbrella
yes,
term.
Boogaloo.
yes.
Okay, you said Dana, you mentioned about animation and Boogaloo being together and then separating and coming back.
So what I meant by that is at the beginning, Donald Matthews, better known as Duck, he didn't know most people who stumble onto a dance, they never do it on purpose. It's
Mhm.
always an accident.
Mhm.
Tap dancing was based like that. I remember talking to Don Camelot a long time ago. When he was, I think it was at Maverick Flats he was telling about, and he said he didn't know how to dance. So he would do the funky chicken and start pointing and laughing and grabbing his hat. And I think the only movie was a freeze. That was it. And that he didn't even have a name for it. It's just what it was. It wasn't to innovation to different people evolutionized and people start giving names like the Uncle Sam, the Witcher Way, the Alpha, and then somebody called it locking. Then he told me himself he didn't name all that, but he ran with it because he said it worked for him.
Right.
But he had it at the beginning say so everything works like that. You stumble on something by accident and somebody else gives it a name and next you know it has a life of its own. But this the same way with Duck. He wasn't trying to animate. He wasn't even thinking about. He was just dancing, trying to group and be because he was like an old dirty bastard, like a comedian. He was always trying to be different. Like I said, he took the hands from Crazy Hero from the Pilot show. He took the worm from the African dancers. He already was doing the neck and this freeze. I'm not sure where he got that from. And then he had the Italian, which is an early version of the Shamrock. And in between, he would do different creatures. And so what happened was unintentionally, the next generation comes with Jerry Rente, which is Albert with 1+1, which is Jerry Rente, Michael Enoch's album. And they're the way they took it to the level. They start taking the moves from the movies Seven Voyages of Sinbad, Golden Voyage of Sinbad, Jason the Argonauts, and those were all done by Ray Harryhausen. The original stop motion person was Willis O'Brien. He did all the stop motion in 38, the 30s, and then I think his protege was Ray Harryhausen. So when he came with the stop motion, Jerry did two things. He took stuff from the movies, the stop motion, and he took stuff from cartoons and that's when the name animation started floating around. So what they were doing, they were mixing the animation, kind of how the Drake was. That was a lineage. They were doing he was worming because he was called the worm. He was worming, and then he might stop and break down and start doing a character or something and turn it to, they would turn it to characters. He had two styles. He worm and he danced, and then they would turn it to character. And they still film. I mean, they're old now; they can't do anymore. Where they're making this monster noise and they're doing. It was the older style of the Dinorama because there's a newer style when Tony Newsom came later and Ted and them, they took it to a whole nother level, but that's another conversation. But what I'm saying is they were imitating the monsters from 20 Million Miles and all that stuff. And they were, what was it, 20 million, what was it called?
20 million miles to Earth.
20 Million Miles, where they're moving all like this and they're all like, they're moving all like this. They were trying to, they were imitate. They weren't. Well, I don't think the posing came in yet. They were doing the stopping,
Mm-hmm.
and they took that with Duck was doing to another level and combined it with Boogaloo, and that's where the animation and Dinorama came in. And
So,
then other bookers, they saw that some ran with the animation, some wanted to do just the dancing part, some just want the Dinorama part, and some mix it together. It depends who. That's how I got picked apart. I hope I answered that right.
so to clarify, I want to make sure I'm on the right page of. So it sounds like Duck. People was him first was giving a form of animation
Unintentionally,
unintentionally
unintentionally.
giving people saying or feeling he's looking animated. Then
Yes.
Jerry,
Saw him and said,
oh,
"We're going to take this to another level."
Jerry and Albert and
Albert and Michael Enoch, I'm
one
going to
plus
take the characters from Ray Harryhausen stop motion
right.
and take the cartoons and do that style and mix it all together. And that's where the word animation, that's when it started floating around.
That's when it started to float around.
Yes.
Okay, and it seems that Jerry, well, Albert and Michael Enoch, 1+1, they seem to be the most popular group doing and sharing this term. Because I understand the idea that maybe there were other people that were watching the Sinbad, but it seems like 1+1 was the group to spread it. Is that true? Would that be
Well,
or
well, not so much spread it because at that time there were different. They were see once Jerry Renton had got it, that became their thing. That's what they were specialized in. But once Boogaloo and animation, remember I told you split apart. People start picking apart what styles they want. They did told styles that had nothing to do with animation. They start creating their own stuff. There were spin-offs. Somebody might take one move and make a whole style into it. Anytime you have a dance in any urban community, once people see it, they have their own interpretation. Before you know it's out of control, but the foundation is still the same, which is illusion and stop. That's the common thing. It's a stop, illusion, and you're dancing. That's the thing that never changes.
let me correct
Uh,
let me correct myself. I feel like I want to make a correction of my
I'm sorry.
question.
Okay.
Why is that 1+1 is why people are referencing for animation for Jerry innovating? Why is
Because
one
the
plus
reason why, because they're the first ones to take the creatures from Ray Harryhausen's movies that are stop motion, and we know stop motion is frame to frame. So what they were doing is imitating and bringing those creatures' movements to life in their dancing, and that's an ultimate form of animation, and that's why.
so Oakland started talking about this 1+1 Jerry. His name started to spread,
Yeah.
and they were like, okay, this dude, he's doing this, and then he probably would say, oh, I'm looking at the Sinbad, I'm looking at the okay, okay. So then
He was doing two things. He was looking at the cartoons. I believe he referenced what was those cartoons where the guy flies off, the superheroes?
Oh yeah, the rope man.
Rope Man. He looked
okay,
at that style. That's why he came in the worm because he was good at the worm. And that's more of the boogaloo style. When you start worm, because that lineage comes from duck. That's more of the boogaloo side of it. And then he did that. That was one style he did. And he also would do the die Italian because that was handed down, which is a form of another form of the shamrock. But then they decided to go another direction. But they were really going. It was more of the older style anime because when Tony Newsom and Ted went in, they were more. That's when the posing came in. That's when it was another, and it was like a different level. It was like really. It looked just like where they would actually do the big movements like the monster. I think Jerry was doing something. He's yelling. He's going across the thing like a monster. The Dinorama monsters.
okay. So Duck, Jerry, and then you're saying it evolved with Tony Newsom.
No, they didn't come yet. There was another generation after that. Well, same time. This is when Hamill and them came in, and this is what when Hamill was the guy. Now I don't know who came with it first because we don't
Right.
know.
We don't know.
But Hamill is the guy, Anthony Hamill. They call him Hamill. He graduated in '72 from Fremont. Correct me if I'm wrong. He modified this. He had a V chest. He had an unusual chest. When he would worm, it just looked like he had three chests, and he throw the hands out, and he's the first one to get down and jump to the side. And nobody ever seen that before. Now, I don't know if it happened with Kenny Chambers and him at the same time, but about 71, 72, he was dancing because he was a mascot also. And he would get down, he would jump to the side, and he was the first one to start shifting around, and he would do a lot of the stopping like this, but it wasn't a pose yet, it was just a stop. He'd always stop like everything he would stop like this. He'd throw his hands and he'd stop like this, and he'd worm, he'd turn shift. So he was basically advancing with Jerry Rente. Not yeah, he was advancing. He didn't take on the animation style and the diorama that Jerry Rente, but he was taking from Duck.
Hmm.
Remember I told you they went two different ways. Some people want to go with the animation style, and some people just want to go straight boogaloo without any pantomime or man. They just want to do it raw and fluent.
Right.
Because everybody couldn't do it, so they chose to do the stuff where they just throw the hands and just keep stopping. Uh,
Interest. Okay.
they would follow the lineage of duck creatures, but not the stop motion, because there's a difference between the creatures moving around kind of and the stop motion. It's a specific look that they have when they're moving. So I think that it's really complicated to answer because it starts going two different ways.
Right.
I know it's very complicated. And I hope that's making sense.
Right. No, no. When would you say that people were really giving this? So clarify for me, when were people or who was involved with the stop motion effect?
You mean what person will stop?
Yes. Jerry
So
or
first it was Jerry Rente, Albert Milne, and Michael Enox and them. They're from was 67 to 72, 73. And then it came around again around 77, 78 when Tony Newsom and Ted Williamson came around and they took it to a whole nother 74.
Ted was before,
Ted, when did Ted start dancing?
right after Jerry.
But then when he started doing
Or, I
stop
mean, he was
motion.
doing that right after them.
So after Jerry, he said, okay, just fact check me.
Like
After Jerry Rente and Ted Williams came in. And so another thing happened in 74, that's when the pose came in. So when people start posing, that took it to another level. Because already when you're stop motion, you're moving around, it's already kind of amazing. But when you pose it and you're moving it, it's a vibrate. So take the stop motion. So when Ted and Tony Newsom started doing it, it took the stop motion to a whole nother thing because you're vibrating, posing, and you're moving like a monster as opposed to
wow.
just stopping moving like it. So it
And
took it to a whole other level.
and that is what the current I would say currently I feel in the current like in the climate of animation now, that is what is aimed for, I would say, by most animators of the stop motion effect, the way you're describing it, that Ted Williams um, innovated with. I would
Yes,
say
yes.
currently, and so that's interesting. Okay. And also, I think it's interesting to hear about Duck because, to my knowledge, and I think majority knowledge, when people talk about animation, it stops at stop motion. When people talk about, okay, animation, how far does it go? It seems to stop at Sinbad. But you're sharing again that, Duck being in the mascot, it was still, there was more history. There wasn't just like what you're sharing, there was more
It
before
it it, it, it evolved and it kind of skipped over because, like I said, once Boogaloo came out, it started together, then it
started
separated.
and then it
And
separated.
then Tony Newsom and Ted and them, they brought it back in a whole nother form. And the reason why it looked more amazing because now the pose is in. So when you
Pose.
when you pose and move Sinbad, when you pose Sinbad, that takes you to another level. Where Jerry Renton, they were moving, but they were just stopping. The posing hadn't started yet. So they're stopping and they're doing what they're doing there. They might turn them on, but all they're doing is stopping. So it's the first
Oh,
part. But when the posing came in, that took it to another level.
right. It's getting
And
more
that's where the real
detailed.
animation came
It's
in.
like
Because
getting
the,
more
the, the
frame.
pose the pose changed everything.
I see. Okay. Uh,
That's what he was talking about when he went from this and when he went to the pole. When he went to the poles, it took it to another level.
wow. Okay. All right. Wow. When it was posing was added, what was this around? What year?
For our interview, 74,
Possibly late 73.
possibly
Yeah.
73,
73,
73. So the first person that we know on the side was the Black Messengers or the
Yes.
Mechanical Devices. We don't know what member there did it, but the story I heard is they were having a contest to see who could stop the hardest, and the other person said, "I can stop harder than you. I can stop harder than you," and it kept getting harder and harder. Somebody, what about this? Oh shit! What kind of stop was that? And that's the urban myth I heard. But we heard that it was born in 74 with the Black Messengers. And once that happened, and I said, I don't know if it happened simultaneously at the same time, but the Black Messengers came with the hard pose in 74. And from that, everybody started posing and it took everybody's animation to another level because now you're just your stop is animated. Before you do what you're gonna do, you might turn around, do like this and grasp something up like this
Right.
and turn this way, and you might stop like this and
Yes.
you're you're moving like that now instead of just stopping.
Okay. Speaking of the Black Messengers, was there any influence from LA to the Black Messengers or influence from LA to Oakland? What's the relationship between Oakland and LA? And also, I guess
So
the Black Messengers and LA.
okay, you make sure you fact check me if I'm wrong on this. So there's a couple of connections. So in 1978, and I believe he's on Cool Boy show talking about this. Robot Prince, who was an incredible roboter, I think he does mime, he does the mime, this stuff like this, and he's real good at that. He's he does all that stuff where he brings stuff down like that. He was already an expert at that.
Mm.
So I guess around 1978, he was at a place called the Disco Train in LA somewhere. And he ran into Boo. He didn't know it was Boo. And he saw Boo dancing. And all of a sudden, Boo was dancing. He did this pow, he exploded like pow. And Robot Prince tells a story like he thought he was high or like tricking on something. He said, "Man, what was that?" So in 1978, I believe, I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, at the Disco Train, they had an interchange. They met each other. And so Boo showed Robot Prince how the pose went. Robot Prince got that pose. So as opposed to doing this and how he usually does like this, he started adding a pose to his thing. And it took his shit to another level. So that was the first exchange right there. The other obvious situation is in 1977, what we call the Black Messengers here, but you guys know as the mechanical devices, they were on Chuck Berry's Gong Show twice, and you could clearly see them stepping, and you could clearly see them posing, and that's in 1977. That's even before Boo even got here. So as far as that situation, that ends that situation.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Am I right? You need to back me up.
there's a
Okay.
little that yes, and Granny and Robotroid Inc. were also on the Gong Show in '77.
That's right.
And they weren't hitting as hard as
They weren't
the
hitting.
Messengers, but there's a little, you could see them doing a little bit of the hitting there. When they say pose,
Yeah.
by the way, they mean with the hit,
Yeah, well, yeah,
right? Because
both.
instead of just posing,
Yeah.
right, like how we might think. When they talk about posing, they mean with the hit.
Yeah.
And so there was that. And then Boo, I think, actually went down there in '76, but I don't recall like who he had shown or who he had talked to or whatever. So it's around between the years of like '76 to '78, the Bay Area was going down to LA and making these small little connections and influences.
That's right.
And keep in mind, the Gong Show was nationally televised.
Yes.
That's right.
So it was, people would have seen it all across the nation, really. But people even like what's his name, Hurdle and Gizmo talk about him all the time. Deuce.
Right.
Deuce said in his song that he saw the mechanical device on Gong Show, and that was one of his influences, right? So people were seeing them little bits and pieces in LA. But to answer your question, from LA to the Bay influence, other than locking, I'd never heard any of the guys in the Bay Area, especially the older guys, like before the '80s, talk about getting anything from LA in terms of boogaloo popping, strutting, and all that.
That was done. That was 1977 on the Gong Show, and the other one is Boo going to the Disco Train, exchanging with Robot Prince, showing him the explosion pose. So, and like I told you, the Black Messengers have been posing like that since '73, '74.
Yep.
Had already been posing.
Yep.
So that information, wherever it came from, is false. The other information is false. That's the truth.
Okay. Okay. And I do know, I mean, I don't know no Robot Prince, but I've seen Robot Prince, and he definitely is. A lot of people in LA do mention his name when they talk about robot, and someone that was, crazy robot, also adding animation. So hearing that Robot Prince was in contact with Boo, and Boo is from Oakland, I can see this.
And you could reference that. If somebody wants to reference that, they can ref that. He was on the Cool Boy podcast, and he talked about that himself. So if somebody wants to hear the facts, he says that himself. And also, Boo is on there another time, and he references it from his perspective.
And Boo, by the way, he's from Richmond originally. And they were doing a style of boogaloo. They called it robot.
Advanced robot.
But once he saw John Murphy from the Messengers, Boo went to Oakland to try and learn boogaloo, like how they were doing it, because he really liked how clean it was, the hit, all that, because John Murphy's in the Messengers, right? So then Boo took that Messenger style, plus probably some Richmond stuff he was doing too, That's what got to LA.
Okay, so
That's how it happened.
messengers. Wow, I can see they definitely had a influence of, like you're mentioning, Boo, and Boo is connecting to Robot Prince, and also messengers by influence of Deuce, and I know Deuce is connected with Gizmo. So, and I know Gizmo currently right now, he's really hardcore, and talk about animation and such.
Oh yeah, he's
So,
passionate for it.
yeah, yeah, okay, okay. Well, then is one last thing about LA influence in the relationship with Oakland. Would you say that locking came? What did LA influence Oakland when it comes to locking? Because locking is the
I
LA.
can't really answer that because I was never a locker. I don't know how to lock. I mean, somebody else, but I don't know the locking history of the Bay Area. I can't answer that.
Okay, got it. My next question would be about strutting. Of when did that come about? When did that take place in the name and the style?
So strutting is just another word for strutting was another word that replaced boogaloo, and it's all the same movement. They just went to another different city, and Granny from Granny Robotroid, she coined the word strutting. And what it is it was a fusion of two different styles because she had two guys. I think Wayne Jackson, her son Tony, and then in the Robotroids was Donald Jones or Donald Singleton and Alfred Jones, and they put them together and they mixed the style together and they renamed it strutting and modified the movement, but it's the same basic movement. Just it just went to a different city.
San Francisco.
San Francisco went to San Francisco. But it wasn't until Close Encounters got it when it really changed. When he sped, that's a whole nother conversation. When he sped it up to 45, they came up with the space outfits, the spaceships, and doing moves nobody ever seen before. And that's what led to our group, Demons of Mind and the Media Circus. But that's a different question. But she coined that.
So,
Yeah.
Grammy,
I
were you
I
saying?
do want to make. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say,
Yeah.
just for my clarification, Granny and the Robotroid, she was a strut. Her group was strutters. They were strutting.
They were dancers, and she coined it as strutting.
But they
But
were
she had two
doing
dancers from Oakland that were boogaloos who joined the dancers. I don't know what San Francisco was calling it before. Was they always calling it before Granny started dancing? What was San Francisco calling it? You probably have to interview a San Francisco guy to know their beginning of their individual history, as far as what they called it.
Mm.
But we know that when she came from 75, she coined it strutting. I don't know what they call it for strutting, San Francisco history.
what they were doing, it was a Boogaloo group
They were a
that,
boogaloo.
because again, two West Oakland dancers, the Robotroids were a West Oakland group before Granny got to them. She saw them, decided she wanted to be their manager and bring them to San Francisco to perform
Mm.
in talent shows and whatever else they were doing. And that's when they started seeing in San Francisco, they started seeing Boogaloo. And then also at the same time, there was a couple East Oakland dancers like Ben James and Richard Smart, Shaba. They had a group called Live Incorporated, and that was around the same time as 75. And so they were doing Boogaloo's group stuff and solo stuff. But because I think Granny, because they were kind of doing a lot of shows because she was their manager, getting in a lot, seeing a lot,
Mm.
she called the group stuff strutting. So the group in initially, apparently the group stuff was mainly referred to as strutting.
Hmm.
But over time, as everything changed, San Francisco, just as it spread there, everybody, if you were doing this dance, you were called a strutter.
Got it.
And that kind of became the umbrella term and took over the Boogaloo term. And of course, they added their own flavor and their own mixture of movement and new stuff and took things to a different level, right? And then they did the swinging of the arms and the stepping. They called it in the Fillmore district. That was the Fillmore step, you know.
The Fillmore
But
step. The Fillmore isn't a style; it's a step.
Well,
I'd say
no.
it's a style.
Well,
No.
no. So Fillmore, did you?
No. I was just
Okay.
that's where it gets confusing.
No, I'll
I
explain
get
it. I'll explain it to
go
you.
ahead. Mhm.
Fillmore is a I'm from the Bay Area, but I was in a San Francisco group, Demons of the Mind, and later on Media Circus now. So Fillmore is a district inside of San Francisco.
Okay.
So the group style that Granny called was called strutting. As it evolved and different groups um, evolved, some dancers would say, I'm a strutter, and somebody say he's doing the Fillmore strut. So let me explain that to you. So he was talking about Ben, who's lemon drop, green eyes, kind of looks like me.
Hmm.
James.
Ben James. It was three guys, I think, that came from San Francisco, from Brookfield Village, which is in Oakland, that moved to San Francisco. I think one was Rob Lowe's brother, I forgot his name. Did Jeffrey Malone move there? Or did Jeffrey?
I don't know.
No, okay. Raymond Lowe and Ben. So Ben was already an incredible boogaloo in East Oakland. He had a style remember I told you about this hand style?
Right.
He evolved it where he had his own style called directing traffic. And he cleaned that style up and it looked incredible.
Wow.
And so what happened was he moved to San Francisco, and when they seen him do that was just part of his moves. When he did that, they were so impressed, they turned that into that one move, they turned into a whole style. It's called the Fillmore strut. There's guys that come out and they'll just do that. Or that'll be their basis, and then they'll robot hit on you and they'll get back to that. So he created, just for him of moving to there, that was his move, and they end up calling that the Fillmore strut. And to show you how dancers move around, he moved to Kansas, and people saw him out there, and a skinny comedian saw him and picked up a style, and the comedian got famous, and he started doing it. His name is Eddie Griffin.
Okay.
Eddie Griffin flipped it around. He didn't do it just like Ben, but he flipped it around. So it's going to show you how people move and styles exchange and interchangeable, and things get fused together.
Okay.
Because Live Incorporated also was a half Oakland, San Francisco group, so they fused the styles together, and the moves got a little more advanced. Because Oakland was kind of the last group was Derek and Company, and they were kind of the last of the old groups, and the moves were getting limited. So the San Francisco guys start coming with different varieties, different formations, and different ideals coming out of time machines, and they were mixing the styles together. So the style was strutting, but when you came out on your own, you were strutting, or you were doing the Fillmore strut within the strutting. It took on a life of its own. So from the coin, from the group, from the individual dancing to the Fillmore strut.
Okay.
And that's how that happened.
Got it. And
Is that clear enough? Did I explain that clear enough to you?
Yeah, yes. How it seen again, the lines, the traces, inspiration of Oakland, the members of people being from Oakland and being part of Granny's group. The Fillmore strut again. So Oakland still being being a source of
So let me tell you, I talk about this all the time, and it's gonna make sense. I always talk about the cake.
Come on.
The cake.
The cake.
So I'm just going to make this year up. So in 1958, if somebody makes a cake and nobody's ever seen a cake before, oh my God, what is that? It's called a cake. We never seen anything like that. So now everybody knows what a cake. It's a viral. If it was such a thing in 58, viral. 2 years later, somebody makes an upside down cake. Oh my God, we never seen that before. Another year, somebody makes a chocolate fudge cake. Yeah. And last but not least, 5 years later, somebody makes a red velvet cake. Oh my God, you got to hear about this red velvet cake. Man, it's incredible. It's something new. No, it's not new. It's still a cake. All you did was add it on fudge, banana, red velvet. The cake doesn't change. It just takes different forms. So when I talk about the Fillmore strut and how San Francisco will do the Fillmore and all that, think back. Crazy Harold.
Right.
Duck.
Right. It's all right. Right.
Are you see what I'm saying? Crazy Harold, who's from Highlight, from Chicago, 67, to Duck and all the other dancers.
Philadelphia.
Is it Philadelphia?
Yeah.
To Highlight. I'm sorry. I apologize. If I make a mistake, forgive me. He says Highlight was in Philadelphia. It was a show in Philadelphia. Because all these shows are coming back out again. The Scene, all these dance shows are coming back out again. So from that Harold to Oakland to Duck to Anthony Hamilton, he modified. Ben from Brookfield took it to a whole nother level, moved to San Francisco. They called it the Fillmore strut. It became a standard move.
Wow.
It's like the wheel. You can't reinvent it. It keeps getting modified. So that's the connection.
Okay.
So it's just the same movement. It's just modified, a different name and modified. That's all it is.
Okay.
And it spreads like fire in every generation, every area renames it what they want to call it, but you can't get around from the foundation. You can't get away from that. You can't reinvent the wheel. Reinvent the wheel.
And Richmond called it roboting.
They called it roboting.
You know, other parts of the Bay called it popping.
Sacramento called it they called it oak parking, busting, striking.
Popping too.
They had different names out there.
Yeah. So, anyways,
I didn't mean to get off track, but go ahead.
Bryce, you're saying that people were calling it popping. Are you saying people were calling it popping before?
Go ahead, Bryce.
Oh, here we go.
It's Bryce's turn to get.
From my understanding, popping was a term that was popularized with Popping Pete, which or Boogaloo Sam is saying he, with the pop. Also, I know LA has pop locking. So you're saying popping was also being described in other areas.
Yeah. So we don't have yet an origin story of like when that word was applied to this dance and who, but we do know that multiple cities from at least 77, potentially 76, but definitely 77, Sacramento, Hayward, San Jose, East Palo Alto, like all these cities started using popping to describe this dance.
But which
And
was Boogaloo. I mean, it's
yes,
changing, evolving. It changed. Okay.
Yes,
correct.
yes.
We're talking as far as using the word. It's still the same movement. It's
Right.
evolved to another name, but
Okay.
we're
So
talking about
popping. So,
using the word.
Yeah. And of course
mo-
it starts evolving. It does look a little
Evolves.
different because you're getting, you're moving
Of
around
course,
it.
yeah.
But that it's basically all the same foundational movements that
Yes.
Boogaloo had.
Yes.
Right.
And we're just finding this out
So
recently. We got research and interviews, but he'll go ahead.
yeah, so if you wanna like, I know the EBs have a story of Sam saying he created it in 75 and used the word, but because we don't really have anybody backing that up besides him, it's kind of, and other things that we've shown that they've been wrong about, it's kind of like, I don't know if I trust that. But what I do know is that there's a lot of people in all of these cities that can back up them using the word popping in 77, again, potentially 76, but we're still looking for like that origin. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
what we know in the Bay Area and Sacramento.
what did these cities mean by popping? What was the movement that they meant when they said that?
So they did hide because the pose, the hard hit was a big part of the dance by that time. It was one of the main parts of the dance. That of course the pop, right? It's like that makes sense that they would call that a pop, but it also was kind of used like an umbrella term at the same time. So it's a little bit confusing depending on the individual
Or
dancer and the
generation.
area. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I think that word made sense with the dance because they were doing that hard pose and that hit so much.
Okay. 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 So
What
yes.
one of the things that happened is with Boogaloo, because it gained its popularity during the funk era. And so funk music was a little slower brand of music. So in order to pose and to hit with funk, the entire concept was to create an illusion. So because the music was slower, you had to be more patient and deliberate, and you had to sit in funk music in order to create the illusion.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the difference between that and popping is they're both trying to create an illusion. We did it in a slower pace. Popping does it with speed because the music sped up. So it's not the dance that drives the music, it's the music that drives the dance. So as the music sped up, they feel like they can create the same illusion, but they do it with speed. With ours, it was more deliberate because everything was on the one. So it was boom, 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 boom. Theirs can be boom, 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 because that's what the music dictates. So for me, popping is just an evolved version of Boogaloo.
I see.
And I hold that question because I know you want to finish asking a question. Before James Brown came with the one, R&B, soul, and blues was on the 2 and the 4. When James Brown came up Cold Sweat in 1967, it was on the 1. So that allowed you to stop on the 1 and create illusion. If you know Barry's, they take their time and they're telling the story and they give you time to create illusions. But when the electro funk came out, I think when Planet Rock and all that stuff started coming out, I'm not knocking that because that's a new generation.
Right.
When you pow, 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 it's good, but it doesn't allow you enough time to create because you're going too fast. But that's their opinion, that's their choice. I'm just saying that's the perspective of OGs, how we thought of it. We don't change. That's the difference between. But go ahead, you can ask the question. I just want to put that statement in there.
Okay. Got it. Well, my next actually thought was, I know what you're saying. Bryce, you were saying 77, 76, popping, the term being spread around different cities, correct?
Yeah.
Was there waving or tutting being done in these cities around that time? Did you see waving and tutting in the Bay Area?
What year?
I guess when did you see waving and tutting?
Well, in our era, the only waving it was up until like I say up to 79 was just the wave you see there's a clip on Soul Train, I believe 19, I don't know if it's 78, 79. The group called Eclipse. I think it's Jeffrey Daniels and Casper and Cooley. And they got this thing when they got the newspaper and they're waving back. They're waving their body back. That was the only way we did. The only tut we did was like a big tut. It was like more like this turn and we turn our body, but it wasn't all the complicated stuff. That didn't come into that didn't come into later to other people he talked about and the new generation. We didn't do that.
Okay.
Yeah, the Oakland was doing it's the tidal wave.
We did the tidal wave.
Right? And that's pretty old from what I hear. Like,
oh, it's real old.
Like mid 70s.
Because once they got started doing the worm, they stopped doing the worm. They had to think of a different way to wave because that got old after a while moving like that. So we got to figure out a new wave.
Right.
And then that was the next wave that came after that. And by the time we perfected it, Oakland just stopped. They had stopped by 79, 80. Oakland was done. They had stopped Boogaloo.
But you do see them do when they do the arms, the swinging the arms. Some guys do like a little bit of it.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right.
Like
Yeah, I don't think they're intentionally doing it, but they're doing like this. Yeah, I guess you're right. I never
kind of like a
snakes.
little,
right.
Oh no, I take that back. I take that back. I apologize, you guys, if I'm wrong. I seen Tony Newsom. He was light years ahead of his time. And he had this move where he was imitate because he had took animation and 3D because you remember it was at first it was Willis O'Brien in 1930 who did the stop motion. And then after him, Ray Harryhausen came with the stop motion. So Jerry Rich and them, when they were moving, they were stopping like this. They were moving like that, but they weren't posing. They were just I can't help. I've been posed so long I can't even go still. But they were like this. Tony had a move where he came down like this, and he had his arms like this, and he would start waving his arm, and he would move like this, and it looked like he had forearm. He'll move like this, and he'll come like this. He'll look up, and he'll turn. He'll go like this, and he'll like turn this way, like he was like a snake, and he'll move this way. And his arms would be waving. I don't think he was intentionally trying to wave. I think he was trying to imitate the snake wave when he was like this, and he'll move, and then it looked like an arms would start coming all over like that.
Nah, that's just
Most incredible thing I ever saw in my life.
How was doing?
No, Tony, because that's
And he's doing something like this.
Yeah.
Like that, you like, and he all come all over, and then he'll look like just like that lady on this in back. And he had the music playing. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun. And then he had that thing with the 8-arm lady. He come like this with the cha 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 ding 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 ding. He looked just like him. So I take that back. That was the way, but I don't think it was intentionally. I think that was a snake lady. So that's the closest I would say.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you get to like 77, San Francisco, the Close Encounters did the arm wave as a group, and they were doing an arm wave like from one hand to the other. According to all the Simone guys talk about that.
Yes, and he's talking about a whole nother city. Yeah.
It's so I think late 70s, the arm wave and kind of they were taking waving to the next levels. And then probably late 70s still sometime or like the tutting, they were starting to build these things.
That's right.
So late 70s to early 80s, that's when stuff was like really all these other like more intricate.
They start morphing
stuff,
into different styles. That's where I was around, but like I said, he would be more. I was there. I could explain it too, but because he does more the newer style, he could explain that better.
Okay.
So there were more what they call hybrid.
It was mixing together. Yeah, styles were getting mixed together. Hybrid styles. It took a life of its own.
Yeah.
Why do you feel this was a moment of hybrids? Why specifically late 70s? It's become
because I think that's where we started to kind of see things sort of change and sort of transition. I don't think that we can pinpoint an exact year, but that's when we kind of saw things sort of and to me it's I think it was just a natural evolution of it all. I mean, whatever great things we did with the dance, when it passes on to a younger generation, greater things are they to do with it than we. And that's just how it's always going to be. So yeah, it just because it was a mixture of so many things. Most of the people from our generation, or at least I can speak for myself, and I think I can speak for Dana as well. I can watch someone dance, and within 2 to 5 minutes, I can see something that they're doing that we did years ago, but they just call it something else. And because I've been around long enough. And like he said earlier, there is nothing new under the sun, but there is a beginning. the beautiful thing about this is that the end hasn't been written yet. So what I believe the younger generation is sort of clamoring for now is as they strike out on their own, they don't want to be connected to the older generation. They want to carve out their own. But mankind's been doing that with everything since the beginning of time. So that's what they want to do. They want to carve out their own. So part of what they don't understand is that at some point, somebody's going to ask the question, wait a minute, wait. A lot of this stuff is really, really, really starting to look the same. Where can we go to find originality? Well, you can't find it going forward because everything that is considered to be original, you have to go back to get it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why no matter how far this thing goes, you're always going to see Boogaloo was the tree. You can always tell the tree by the branches.
Mm.
And so when I look at these other art forms that came after, and by the way, I call it art. And the reason I call it art is because not everyone can do it.
Mm.
Andy Warhol was a famous painter. Now, if everybody could do what Andy Warhol did, Andy Warhol wouldn't be a famous painter.
Mm.
As far as I'm concerned, this dance is art, no different than tap, no different than ballet, modern, jazz. Part of the reason that they're considered arts because they have their virtuosos. Okay. Well, in this art form, it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between the two is in order to do the other four conventional dances, you have to take classes to learn.
Mm.
This thing called street dancing is self-contained. And for the most part, it's self-taught. That's why it needs a special category, but it's still art.
I see. Okay.
Well said.
Yes. Yes.
That was good.
Yeah.
I want to speak. You have something?
Go ahead.
Oh, I want to speak on something about. So what happens in life naturally, I don't care where it is, if you do a style that's known for, things are supposed to evolve. I give you a perfect example. Well, no, I'm not going to give you that sample now. You're talking about things fusing, things changing, things morphing. So I did that myself. So I got Demons of the Mind came out in 1978. I got into Demons of Mind in 1983 as a mascot, and I officially was in the group in 1984. So before Demons of Mind was like block, everything was block, it was incredible. A perfect example you see on Dance Party TV 20 on St. Patrick's Day, I think 1982. They're dancing off The Beat Goes On by Orbit. They got on all green, and they're doing all this crazy, incredible stuff, but they're stopping and they're looking unreal.
Yes.
So when I got in the group, I just got out of a group from Richmond called the Criminons. I hung around a lot of Richmond groups. So what I did is I took the Richmond style of dance and mixed it with San Francisco style. And that's what you see me. When you see us in that film in 1984, now that Stockton, which I'm going to speak on that in a second. Before that, Demon's Mind would just block hard and hit. When I got it, I mixed the Richmond style and the Frisco style together. And that's what you see. That's what you see us doing today. But I want to speak on something else. I meant to mention this. I was watching a podcast with Cool Boy, and he had Diesel on there from Fantasy and Diesel. They're the managers of Unique Dominoes. And he had made a statement saying that his group had went against us, and he said Fresno, Modesto, San Francisco. He said around 85, and he said he wasn't sure if Gentleman Production won or we won or whatever. So I just want to give him his answer if he listens. So first of all, it wasn't Modesto, it wasn't Fresno, it wasn't Frisco. It was in Stockton in 1984. By 1985, this dance was dead. Or 85 or 86, I can't remember which one. And Gentleman Production wasn't there. It was us, the Playboys, and Unique Dominoes. We took first in 84. The original Playboys, Playboy Rob, and I think Playboy Vic, they had their manager with them. They had the doctor gloves on because Playboy Rob, I let them use my gloves, and they had the lady manager. They took second, and the Unique Dominoes, I believe, took third. So I just wanted to clear that up. Okay. Another thing I want to clear up too. A lot of dancers from all over are always saying that Barry is they're incredible. And Diesel made a statement about this too. We're incredible with group stepping, but we don't spend a lot of time on the solo. But first of all, you guys didn't really see us to 84 and start really seeing us to 85. Long before that, that's all it was solo at the first, before group stepping came in. That's all we did was solo. That's what we're known for. But after that had got burnt out, we figured in order to be in a show and compete with the singers and other people, we had to get in a group form because that was more important. And the solo became secondary. We could still solo, but that was secondary to winning the show. But if you catch us at a park or catch us at a show or a social center, then you can see a person solo all day long.
Mm.
You missed all our great soloists.
Yeah.
That's why you don't know about our soloists, because by the time you saw us, our our specific our specialized was on group stepping. Even
Yeah.
us, when we group step, we can all solo, but it's more about the show. So there were thousands of people that can get out. You just never saw that.
Yep.
That's why you didn't. That's so I want to answer that question too. But go ahead.
Why do you feel the Bay Area has such a how do I say the stepping, the group routines, the dominoes? Why is that so strong in the Bay Area? Like no one else I mean I've seen people imitate it, in LA or poppers or but like what is it about the Bay Area that has that the steps like I don't see that anywhere else. I don't see that on the East Coast. I don't see that coming from Europe. Everyone seems to look at strutters. They mention strutters as, oh, the group. Well, look at the piece. Why that? I guess what I'm saying is that group formation. Why Oakland?
So because a group, the first group to set the standard with the dominoes, the ripples, is the Black Messengers. You guys know them as the mechanical devices, but we call them the Black Messengers. And they're the ones that came with the ripples, the dominoes, the hits, all the formations. So since they set that high they had other routines that were like these graveyard routines on stage where they come out of coffins, which was a whole different type of thing going on. But that's a whole nother conversation. That was amazing. That's a whole nother conversation. But when you see that doing this, they focused on I think the discipline comes from, this is just my assumption. We come from a culture, a very deep culture of the Black Panthers.
Hmm.
And in the Black Panthers, they were very disciplined soldiers. And if you see pictures of Black Panthers, they're in formations and lines, and they're like soldiers. And that's in our DNA. We had an ROTC culture, and he could tell you in high school where the ROTC was amazing with flipping the guns and the perfect lines. The discipline was high level between the ROTC, the formation of the Black Panthers, and being disciplined. It's something in the water. I don't know what it is. And then you had the singing groups who had the choreography with their stuff. With even they were incredible with their uniforms and how their lines were perfect. So it was only natural that when the group started dancing, they took on the same, especially if they're going to compete in a show with dancers, singers, and bands, they have to have the same type of look, same type of discipline in order to compete. And I think that's where that discipline came. So when we watched the people like the Black Messengers and maybe the Black Resurgence, they set the standards for the dominoes, the ripples, the perfect lines, with the discipline. So every group after that we stood on the shoulders of them. So we have to keep that up. That tradition never stopped. And I don't think everybody even knows why they're doing it. You just see that group's incredible. We got to be better than them. And each city had the same sequence of that's what it became, because it was more about how neat you was and how uniform you was and how perfect. It's a unison thing. Something about people being unison, it amazes people, even with and that became the format, the basis of the stepping as opposed to the solo part. And I don't know if I answered your question the right way.
Yeah, no, the basically what with the culture, what was going on at
And
the
we
time.
kept that
You
going.
answered it. You answered of what was going on at the time that
Yeah.
influenced the pieces of the routines, the clean lines, the just the mentality. So no, that you answered it perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's incredible. I've heard of I might be incorrect, but I believe even Bobby Andre mentions how group routines are incredible. Like the Bay Area, he even shared like incredible. So it's interesting to know like what was going on to form this movement, this group.
Because and then here's another thing, competition breeds brilliance. So if you're in a group that's perfect and they're perfect, that's going to force you to be more perfect than them and take it to the next level. And next thing you know, you got 1,000 groups that are just unbelievably perfect because you have to be out in order to win the show or win the talent show. You have to be more neater than them and before you know, you got something to say on that one?
No, after you.
Okay. It pushes the letter,
Mhm.
and like I said, when we were in the seventh grade, Uh, no, I take that back. When I got to high school, we even when we did the catch on, you come on, you come back and catch the other person. That's when we did when we were kids. We did that style, and even that was even though it was basic and simple, it's the unity, and I think that comes from our background of the Black Panther culture, the RTC culture, the unison of everything we've done in this culture. I think that culture comes aside and it comes out to the stage. I think that's the best answer I can give. I hope that's the right one.
Okay. Okay. And then Bill, yes, you were gonna
Wait,
share.
Bill, I'm sorry.
Rolling out of the 60s, coming into the 70s,
Oh, sorry, I keep doing that. Huh?
groups,
Mhm.
okay, funk bands. And so our era was the funk era. So there were hundreds of funk bands. Prior to that, before the 60s, you can talk about the Temptations and some of the other groups that were in the 60s. But before that, most of the recording artists in the music was done by solo artists.
Mm,
So rolling out of the 60s into the 70s, it was the era of the bands and the groups.
mm,
So simultaneously, two things happened. We had solo dancers. As he said, there were hundreds of solo dancers. But the other thing that started to happen is that as each generation evolves, their attention span becomes shorter and shorter.
yes.
So in the beginning, you could take a solo performer, put him on that big stage, and he could perform, and everybody was ooh and ah. But as the attention span started to get shorter, nobody went to see one person hog up a 4 minute long record. So that precipitated the need for groups.
Wow.
So when you think about the perfection and the alignment and the discipline, it's because now you have all of these solo artists who created their own,
Mm,
and now you put them in a group.
right.
So now you have all of this imagination and all this creativity going on.
Right.
Yeah. So
It
so so
evolves faster because you have all the brilliant minds
you have
together,
all the brilliant minds putting all this stuff
That's right.
together. So
That's
that
which
right.
has a lot to do with it as well.
That's right. That's
which
right.
now it sounds this is reminding me of the facts when I hear of even Electric Boogaloos of Boogaloo Sam finding the members to put together to represent. I talked to Andre. He talked about finding members. Even Jerry finding Iron Man. It was like people are wanting to find the best that they know,
Yes.
so they can come together, create, and that yeah that right. Okay. Wow. The last question for this, just for our part one talk to today, is this question is going to come from kind of what made me start asking the questions about animation and interviewing these different dancers from different areas. Currently, I would say that there's a hot topic of animation, people talking a lot about it. A lot of dancers entering contests saying, oh, I'm, animation contest. Um, there seems to be also kind of little confusion. Some people are saying that animation is not a dance, but it's more of a technique that all movers use, all styles use animation. Some people want to say, well, I'm an animator, and animation is a style, and that not every that we have an identity in a sense. And there's mixed opinions about should there be kind of like a should people start to talk about foundations of animation, structuring it, kind of separating it from waving, popping, boogaloo, robot? Should we separate it? So I guess my question is, what are your thoughts on animation for the current generation, or for where it may go? And I guess what I was sharing of how the current state of it is. There's contests happening now of people entering animation events, and that's why these interviews I'm doing them, because I want to ask people like, okay, what is this animation? Is it the stop motion? Is it just being a character? Is it you can't define it because there is no way of defining it because people never defined it. Duck didn't define it. So I like to hear your thoughts on animation and the current generation and the future.
So, um,
And Colin, my friend Colin here, who's actually he's a current, I would say a current generation interested in but doing robot and animation. He is also very talking a lot about
hmm.
sharing animation, talking about animation. So yes.
So I'm a belief in evolution. I'm just telling you my opinion. And I don't have a problem with the new generation naming or renaming or restructuring everything because you can't stop the wave of what the new generation. They're going to do, every generation does something the last generation didn't do. And it's organic going to take a life of its own. All I ask is they know where the foundation came from. Once you know the foundation where it came from, you can do whatever you want to do with it because it's too powerful and it's not meant to stay still. It's meant to evolve and evolve. And it has morphed kind of like the caterpillar turned into the butterfly. It's became its own animal. You got like the girl Yaya. I've seen her. She's amazing. You got the Dragon House family with I think Glitch used to be in there and
Glitch, I Glide, Nonstop, Blueprint. Yep.
Blueprint and all them. Nonstop. You got his style. Then you got Chibi, who's amazing. You got the robot family, Back to the Future, in Russia with the main guy. What's the guy?
Yes. That. Yep. They're hosting contests. Yep.
I looked at those contests and I'm like amazed. Like this really didn't went somewhere else. So I, in my opinion, believe something has to grow and you can't stop it, and it should take a life of its own. And they want to call it that's it. All I'm asking is when they ask questions or they look at the sources or the history books, just know where it came from, the foundation. You can't sustain something like that. It's gonna grow. Even when we were doing it from the beginning, it grew just within Oakland and spread out even in that little time. So it's going to take a life of its own. You can't suppress that. So I think it's okay to call it, I have no problem with that. I can't speak for them, but I have no problem with that.
So would you say you would agree or say it's okay that the current generation, if they're saying, slow motion, being a character, I'm going to be
Yeah.
slow motion, I'm going to
Yeah.
tell a story, and they're saying this is animation, then it's okay. As long as they're sharing also the history of where this
Yeah.
is.
I have no problem. I encourage that
Okay.
because I'm a fan of the art before anything else. I'm a fan of this art. And I wouldn't have done it if I wouldn't have gotten. That's what amazed me in the first place. And if that's what it takes them to go to the next level and push the ladder, um, that's their perspective, And so I push. For me, I can't speak my comrade. I don't know what they're going to say, but I just don't forget where it came from and pay. That's always saying pay solid because
Don't forget where it came from, and it's
and know the history. But yes, that's to me
got it.
that's fine.
Okay. Got it.
Because so many moves have morphed and changed and slow motion, like you said, glitch and
Which and people
moves that are evolving that weren't, we were just scratching the surface, and so many moves are coming out that we could never imagine. The glides they're doing. I mean, those glides, those guys in Memphis are doing, and the stuff the flexors and the bruck ups are doing, and the
Right.
kick dancers in Chicago and the jittins in Detroit, and everybody's the turfing here, turfing up group on the floor. Our turfers who will be our grandkids.
Yes.
They're turf dancers. They're even taking stuff farther than we did with Boogaloo, and we support them. So they're doing that too. So I support everybody doing because I want to go on forever. Just all I say is just always know where it came from and know the foundation. We just want the truth to be told. We don't get anything out of this. I want the legacy of the older guys for me to people know their legacy. And I try to be as accurate as possible. But like I said, we're trying to remember stuff from 50s. He's younger, so he fact checks me and reminds me and reminds us. So I want to be accurate as possible. But that's my opinion.
Okay. Bill, do you have your thoughts on, I guess, the same question I asked of the generation trying to define it or trying to kind of define it as, oh, this is a style of dance and this is the structure of it, or
Right.
maybe let's not label it. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. For me, I don't see animation as a style. I see animation as a process because it's always been here. So because the whole goal is to create an illusion. Animation is a process used to create an illusion. And it's always been here. Some things we can't explain where they came from. We just know that from the beginning of this art form, animation has been a part of it. And so I think everybody defines it differently. So I don't know that that's what makes it hard for me to embrace it as a style. I think animation just is. I just think that it's a part of creating the illusion. Then that's what it is. So whatever you do, there's a form of animation involved in that. So if one person looks at it and says, no, this is not animation, well, that's to them. But one thing we do know is that the animation part has kind of always been here. So how do you take that, quantify it, and then say this is what it is? Because it's the same thing they did with Boogaloo. That's why there's so many people that don't understand what Boogaloo is, because they weren't here at its infancy or at its inception. So everybody had their own perception of what it was.
Mhm.
And so I feel the same way about animation. It's animation just is. And whatever you do through that to create the illusion, as far as I'm concerned, it's a form of animation.
How do you move forward in the future, but keeping the respect of the culture of animation? How do you move the style forward, but again, keeping the respect?
I think that it's all part of the culture. I think it's all part of the culture of dance. And I think that if you respect the art, then you respect everything that's underneath it. And like Dana said, it's going to evolve. I have no issue with the evolution of it and it's not, for me, it's not the tunnel that they funnel the instrument through. That's that for me, because that just is what it is. We don't know why that is what it is. So if you can respect it because it's art, even with the controversy going on between North and South, the Electric Boogaloo's us, because I can respect and appreciate the art, I know that it has taken some creativity for Boogaloo Sam and those guys to do what they did. It's all creative, But going back to what he said, I have no issue with them saying that this is what they contributed to. But what they can't say is that they created it. You have to understand and know where it came from. You have to respect the actual history of it. Does that?
Okay. So
Yeah.
if they let's hypothetically, if the Boogaloo Sam, the Electric Boogaloo would have said, this is popping, this is the movement, but we were inspired by Boogaloo from Oakland, then it would have been a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, because
No, you had.
yeah, because the problem when they came on Soul Train and Don Cornelius, I bet, asked them, I understand that I forgot what he said. You guys created a dance, Poplin Boogaloo or whatever they said, or they said that on different shows. They never said, no, there's some guys in the Bay Area that are doing it for us. We're just doing the Fresno style of popping.
Yes.
This is our version of it. They're doing it before us. They only start giving us credit when we start pressing them, and then they start saying they were aware of us. But they never volunteered it from the beginning, and that was the problem. Well, that would have been an issue. But because they didn't mention anybody was doing it, period. It's just like, oh yeah, we're creative of it, period. And people don't know that. They're thinking they're creators. They don't know that people were doing that before. And that's what the problem was.
Should it if they were to say we're doing a version of Boogaloo, then wouldn't contest be called Boogaloo contest, not popping contest? Or is it okay
Say that again?
if
Say that again?
Electric Boogaloos, hypothetically, we're speaking hypothetically, but if they were to if they were to say they're doing a variation of the movements are inspired from Boogaloo from Oakland, if they were to say that,
Mm-hmm.
what they are hosting, the contest they're hosting is called Popping. Is that okay to have the name Popping, or should it have been called Boogaloo?
Well, again,
Like
because that goes down to semantics and
Yes.
name. It's still the
Yes.
same movement.
Yes.
Because that's what the semantics is. Because if they say popping and we see that contest and they're doing the same movements that were done before, it's still the same issue.
Okay, so
If
you're
they say popping and they're doing some dance from Mars we never seen before, we have nothing to say. But if they're saying, I don't care what they say, it's semantics. If the movement has already been done in Oakland and you're saying
That is
using
something.
another name, that's even worse. Yeah, that doesn't work either.
Well, for me, it's if they say we're going to demonstrate our version of a dance from the Bay Area called Boogaloo. He said, but we call it popping. See how they connected the reference?
yes.
Or Fresno style
Fresno
popping.
style popping, which
Got
is
it.
We've been okay with it.
Yeah,
There's never been a
but just
controversy.
being able to connect it and to tie it to the original form.
Yeah.
See, that's so because if you don't do that to the average person that doesn't know, it looks like you're the creators of it.
And then one person saying they created it all. It doesn't work. Like God doesn't allow you to create like that.
Right.
Famous quote by Boogaloo Dan.
Yeah.
God doesn't allow you to create like that. A dance is first not created. It's innovated and it's created through lots of people. It evolves. That's how style. No one person comes with 1,000 styles and has a dream and wakes up. It doesn't work that way. So that's another problem.
Let me just say this. Every art form that's created has a history and a culture that supports it. So when I think about the Bay Area versus Fresno, the Bay Area is a hotbed of entertainment. It's a hotbed of a whole lot of things.
Oh, I know where you're going with this one.
Fresno has always largely been a farming community. So where's the history and the culture to support an art form like that being created out of a place like that?
It was a rural area.
So it's not me saying that. It's, it has a history and a culture that, supports it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right.
And I know you don't like to get caught up in.
Yeah,
I didn't know it was going here like that.
Yeah, I
think it's
a life of its own, huh?
Right. But no, what were you gonna say, Dana?
I want to say this because you're asking about moving forward too. What they're saying is just not to forget the history and to always mention like where it came from. And that's kind of what I was telling Clocks on a post, and I was telling you in the beginning was that this dance, it is going to evolve, it is going to change, but to show respect, you always got to, it's just a respect thing. You got to say where it came from and what it started as. You don't have to keep it there necessarily, right? Some people will try to. There you have a traditionalist, and you have the people that are going to push the boundaries. That's always going to happen. But as a community, you can just keep having these conversations. But if you're going to be doing animation and trying to make events, and you're going to teach it, especially all these things,
right?
The very least you can do is just at the beginning of each class, at the beginning of your competitions, whatever. This is the history of it, like at least a quick thing, talking about where it came from. It's something simple, right? So the EBs didn't do that. And as an animation community moving forward, I highly suggest you guys do that. It's just a respect thing, of course, but so yeah, if you're gonna teach a class, don't just be like, this is my way of animation and that's it. Like, at least just show some respect. Like, this is what it used to be, this is where it came from. Now we're gonna do my version.
Are you talking about referring to in general, or are you talking about Sam and the EBs?
It applies to them.
Right. Coming back to the animation, the topic, because currently, again, it's a hot topic, and there's different opinions of how to go about it, because like I was saying, some people will view it as a technique. It doesn't belong to a dance. Crumping can use animation. Flexing can use animation. You can animate any movement, and then there's that confusion. Some people felt like, okay, I enter a contest and everyone's doing everything. There's just a lot of a talk about animation and where it's going to move forward, I would say. And
well, here's the thing, and it's really nobody's fault. It just is what it is. A lot of times when dancers are innovative, I just say create because nobody creates one dance. Dancers are innovated and evolved through a period of time. There's no gatekeeper, and it shouldn't be one. There's nobody in charge of dance to say, okay, these are the rules, this is what it is. So because there's nobody like that, and the hard part is it shouldn't be anybody like that. It takes a life of its own. So there's nobody gatekeeper saying, okay, come back, you're getting too far. So I think it's so large, it takes a life of its own. I think that's the way things work. They start out one thing and they morph into all kind of stuff to the point where 100 years from now, you may not recognize it. But I think that's one of the things when something is so creative and so innovative, it goes so far out, and you got so many different people. Even here, the same thing happened here. It's like I said, we called it Boogaloo in Oakland. Frisco decided to call it Strutting. Richmond called it Roboting. Sacramento called it Busting, Oak Parking, and Striking.
Right.
The Combat, they call it Combat. I think Stockton at one time they called it something different. So naturally, when something goes to a different neighborhood with different people, they rename it, they refix the moves, and then they have, they created a whole different. I mean, I think it was one guy. I'm not trying to be a comedian, but I remember one time, a long time, it was one guy. He lived in some old country town. He had a style where they only could do it when it rained, and he would slide and come up and hit every time. They had a bunch of moves. You slide and you come up and hit, but they only could do it when it rained.
That's interesting.
Now, that was the stupidest thing I ever heard, but that to them, that was a style. You know what I'm saying? So I'm being funny, but I merely was a guy who told me that. So
wow,
that's how things work.
Okay. I feel that definitely again, adding more clarity to the current generation and moving forward. And also, Bryce, I appreciate you adding in as well of, if you're going to teach a class, if you're going to have events, then let's talk about who are the people contributing, where is this coming from, let's talk about the history of it. It's not one single person that is the source, or there's different opinions. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible for let's say the OGs in LA, OGs in the Bay, to all agree on how it should look, but we can get an idea of how it has evolved and how it's gone, I would say.
Well, here's the thing. When people change up and do their style, I'm a fan of the LA guys, LA boppers, the pop lockers, cool. I love all those guys and style. That's their choice and how they're doing their style. And they got varieties of things they do. All I'm saying is when we're telling our story on this side, we want people to know the foundation, how it started. We want to be accurate as possible, tell the truth. We're not lying. My memory might be off a little. I might have to get fact checked, but overall, this is not about money. It's not about ego, fame. We just want the guys before us to legacy not to die and people to know what they did. This is something we would not play around with something like that. I'm a fan of this art. If I don't know something, I'm gonna tell you, hey, I don't know it. Hey, I can't tell you about this stuff. But this is something I've seen since '72 in my own eyes. And the stuff I didn't see, the stuff we people we interviewed, I try to be accurate as possible so people can know what the foundation is. Because once you know the foundation, where it is, the techniques, it's like going to some old ancient Chinese secret that somebody may not know. It's the same, same thing. So I just want people to know I'm not bashing the other styles, but I felt that for the first time ever, they're hearing the real story uncut with us, and the other thing you did with Kearney, Chucky, and you heard with them and Jerry Rente, you're hearing the story uncut with them. And so many people out here telling our story because it's secondhand, third-hand information, and it's not accurate. So that's why I wanted to clear it up so you could talk to the source or close to the source because we have the information. We just want the truth to be out there. And we're not knocking the guys out there doing it. You just need to know the truth that, what did you think we're going to do? We've been doing this forever and we're not going to sit by and not say what we did unless somebody just, that's what we do.
Okay. Okay. No, I hear
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
here. I know I'm cutting time. I'm
I
trying to.
know, I know,
I'm
I
trying
know.
to.
But
I'm trying to. No,
I told you probably get to another thing. Yeah.
I got one. I'm gonna try one more question. I'm gonna get off. But my last question is, if someone came up to you and was like, "What is animation?" What would you say to them? They know nothing about the dance. They know nothing at all, and they're talking about it in the dance. Like, what is this thing people talk about animation and dance? What would you say?
I would say animation is movement that is frame by frame illusion that makes you look like a toy, a monster, or any kind of character out of a cartoon. If you can move a certain way where you look exactly like that frame to frame, where you're imitating something, that would be animation, whatever it is. You could be imitating a tractor picking something up and turning like this and moving, whatever. And, anything you could do. Well, that's more robot. I'm talking about something where you just look like if you look exactly what you're imitating, if you can make your body imitate something and morph your body into frames where you look exactly like a cartoon or look like a machine, that would be animating. That's the best way I could put it. That might not be a great idea, but that's the best thing because it's such an amazing dance. It's so complicated. Sometimes things aren't meant to have words for it. That's the best thing I can think of.
Right.
Because
Right.
I'm not going to use the frame to frame, the old school, because that's what they did. I'm talking about for the people today, whatever's the latest thing. Like I hear, which I'm sure you're going to hear that tonight. I heard OG Midnight talking about how he learned the troning,
Oh, hurdle. Yeah, hurdle. Yeah.
hurdle to troning. That's amazing. I mean, I would have never thought of that. That's a perfect example. That stuff like that. It's supposed to grow and evolve like that.
Right.
I love that.
Okay. Okay. I want to thank you, Dana and Bill and
Okay.
Brian, for coming together and dropping so much knowledge and information. And I'm gonna be looking forward to going through this, watching it again.
Okay, that's cool. I'm glad we can contribute it, man. We just want to know. Does anybody? I know I've been doing a lot of talking. Anybody else have anything to say?
Oh, no, I just want to say something simple about animation. I think that animation is a process that one uses to create an illusion. And so for me, when I think of animation, I think where we get into trouble is when we try to define it. Once you call something a style, now you have to start putting things together. This is why in the beginning, Boogaloo was the umbrella, because when I came along, we didn't even use the word styles. We didn't define it that way. It was all under one umbrella, and it was just movement. So once you call it a style, now you have to figure out a way how to define it. So I look at animation simply as animation is like God. Nobody knows where it came from.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
is. It just is.
I like that. I like that. Okay, nice. Well, that is a great way. I think.
Yeah.
Bryce, did you want to share real before we?
More of the Bay Area's history will be in the docu-series.
Yes.
Boogaloo, the greatest story never told. More episodes are coming very, very soon.
Yes.
Nice.
And Media Circus will be having a documentary coming out pretty soon too.
Nice.
And in the future too. And we're going to talk about our history of the Media Circus and San Francisco history with the strutting groups and stuff like that.
Nice. You know, I want to say one last. I'm really imagining, man, that all these interviews I've been doing to really cut them all apart and put them into one thing so that people could like sit down and just watch like a 30-minute, you know, the highlights of like, oh wow, this is okay. Like you said, Bryce, about having people learn the history before they teach a class or they, you know, it's like, oh, nice. It's just everything contained in a nice video form, which of course that's what you're doing with a documentary. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Dana.
Do what you want with it.
What was that?
Do what you want with
Oh
it.
yeah, do what you like. Do
Hey,
what you
yeah,
like.
Just run it by these guys before you put it out.
Yes.
Yeah, run it by us, but
Who's ever in it?
So did we answer? So what I know you got to move on to OG Hurdle, but did we answer all the questions accurately, or did you is anything you wasn't sure about? That we try to get as accurate as possible. We're trying to recall this stuff and be accurate. Did we answer it accurately?
I would say everything we've talked about today, you've answered accurately. There are questions that I didn't get to ask that I would like to,
I understand that.
Such as like, what were some of the battles you've seen or moments or dancers doing things that you were like, wow, like what was a highlight in your personal dance journey?
Oh, okay.
Stuff like that, or
Okay.
even maybe what were the major influences in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, but we'll have to talk about that.
We'll talk about that next time. I think you got a pretty